Hi, I'm Mitzi, and this is the St. Katherine Celebrate podcast.
Hi, I'm Effie.
Hi, nice to meet you both, even if it's virtually.
And today we are interviewing Aisha Thomas, sorry. So our first question is, tell us about you and your work.
Okay, so I am an assistant principal in an inner city secondary school within Bristol. We are quite a diverse community and we serve lots of children who come to the country with English as their first language. We have about 56% of our students. In terms of a label, for want of a better phrase, we have 85% of our students who are BAME. So that's Black, Asian and minority ethnic. So diversity is extremely important to me in the work that I do. But beyond that, I've decided that there are a couple of campaigns that I really want to support and a couple of movements that I've been working towards. So the first of which is about the lack of Black teachers within the education system. So in 2018, I did a documentary style kind of program with the BBC that investigated how many Black teachers we had in secondary school. And we found that we only had 26 Black teachers in the 19 secondary schools that are here. And then of those 19 schools, half of them didn't have any Black teaching staff at all. So that really kick-started a campaign which was really looking at, well, what is the diversity of your staff body? And do you have a diverse range of teachers, or do we continue to see Black people represented primarily in behaviour roles and cleaning roles? So it was really beginning to break down some of that stigma. My other campaign is called Representation Matters, and it's a company that I recently started. And the reason I've started this movement was because I really feel like there's a lack of representation across education, not just in the sense of physically who is there and who works in the profession, but also about the curriculum that the children are exposed to and the way in which diversity is celebrated within this curriculum, particularly within the UK. So I did a TED talk in November last year, which was really talking about why it's an issue and what we need to do to change. And then my final piece of work has been to support the movement around One Bristol curriculum. I did a project for them called What's in a Name? And the idea behind the project was to celebrate the African diaspora. And I wanted to find a way that could connect people from different communities to begin to have this discussion so we could look at what it means to truly decolonize your curriculum. That's me.
Cool. How do you think that you could change the ratios from white to BME teachers so that students feel like there are more teachers representing them?
I think it's a collective responsibility, and I think we need to look at a number of different factors. So part of the issue is, well, why? Ask the people who would have been in the profession, have left the profession, those who are current and those who are about to join. It's really important that we get voices so that we understand, well, what are your barriers? Is it because of systemic racism? Is it because it's too hard to get into? Are you facing different barriers in your ability to apply, to approach, to stay within? So it's really important to understand that. But equally, one of my biggest issues is that teaching in general, even when you take race off the table, isn't a celebrated profession anymore. And I feel like within the UK, we need to go back to giving teaching the celebration and reward that it deserves. There isn't a career in the world that starts without somebody teaching you something. The role of the teacher is the one profession that every child in their lifetime will experience, and yet we don't celebrate it. And if you take a moment and I said to you, think about your careers days at school, think about all the days where you can go and work experience and things that you can do, teaching is never there. We're a school and yet we'll have in aviation, we'll have lawyers, we'll talk about becoming a midwife, working for the NHS, name every profession you want. And yet even within a school, we don't have a stall set up to talk about education and how you can become an education professional. We're doing ourselves a disservice. So we need to celebrate the profession in itself and then understand that the intersectionality plays a part and that barriers to race could compound how you feel about the education system. And only with your generation and beyond can we begin to change the shift, because it's you guys that we need to become the teachers of the future.
Yeah, definitely.
So our next question is, do you think that the curriculum, and it just including slavery as the only Black history that we ever learn about, is almost whitewashed, like even slavery is whitewashed due to the fact that they don't include any black activists who wanted to stop slavery, apart from like maybe Frederick Douglass, and then they almost include the ideology of like a white savior who's like William Wilberforce, who made like everything right. So do you think that the curriculum is almost too whitewashed?
I think the curriculum in itself, if I'm being honest with you, serves the purpose it was originally supposed to serve, in that there was this ideology that we wanted to make sure that as British citizens, we understood the place in the world that it had, that empire was there, that there was this idea of the Commonwealth and colonies, and that was supposed to be celebrated and continued. The idea was never for, I believe, in the current curriculum, to empower other communities to feel that they are a part of anything. And so I guess the question is, does it serve its purpose? Well, it serves the purpose that was intended. Do I think it's right for the diverse communities that now live within the UK? No, I don't. So I think the problem that we have now is that when you think about, well, what parts of history should we tell? Slavery was such a massive part of history, and there's 400 years of it, and we still face the legacy now. That is the only thing that people feel comfortable to talk about, to an extent, because it's something they feel they know a little bit about. What's really important is that we have to talk about what happened before, what we need to talk about what happened after. Because at the moment, the current education system basically gives us a superficial view of the contributions of Black people. We concentrate on civil activism, even as a very small part. We concentrate on sporting heroes, and we might do a little bit on people who have been in the entertainment industry, particularly in today's time. What we don't do is talk about science. We don't talk about math. We don't talk about invention. We don't talk about historical things like Egypt and the pyramids. We don't do it. And the reason we don't do it is because it's not important. It's not important to those who originally built the system to be the way it is. And if you take, for example, something as important as, if I say to most young people, what is the biggest country in Africa, or the largest country in Africa? They don't know the answer. And the reason why they don't know the answer, because the answer is actually Algeria. And the reason why they don't know is because Algeria wasn't a British colony. It was a French colony. So do you get the point where I'm saying it's about narratives? What is important to you? What is it that I need to focus your attention on? What is it that I want you to know? If we truly want to make the system diverse, if we truly want to make sure that all children feel empowered, if we want to teach white and Black children about all the contributions, then we need to go to a place where we tell the whole story. We need to go to a place where we're honest about our past and our history. I don't think we should erase it. I think we should talk about it. But I also need us to think about empowerment and celebration. As a Black person, I don't always want to hear about the bad things. I don't always want to hear about slavery or fighting and activism. Yes, it played its part, but tell me amazing things like, talk about Kathleen Johnson and talk about mathematics. That's great. Talk about Garrett Morgan and the engineering and the traffic light system. That's great. There are so many things that Black people have done that we use every day in our everyday lives, and yet even Black people don't know that we've done that, let alone white. So if we want to change the curriculum, we need to change the narrative and really understand for ourselves, what is it that we want to get out of it? We want to build whole children, we need to tell the whole truth.
That is a really good point that you just made, and it really helped me understand as well as it would under other people. And our next question is, what do you think of the stuff going on in Bristol, as in the BML movement and maybe the Edward Colston statue being taken down?
To be honest, it's quite interesting in the sense of, I've been doing this work for a very long time. So for me, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little bit meh about some of it, because I feel like this isn't new. Fighting for Black equality, fighting for rights, fighting for equity, I've been doing this a very long time. And at the moment, it feels like we're trending. Bristol's trending. You know, Black Lives Matter is trending. Colston's trending. You know, globally, where everybody's talking about Bristol. And there is some excitement and enthusiasm and optimism in that. And I definitely feel that there is beginning to be a shift and there's a conversation. What I am more concerned about, if I'm being really honest with you, is what happens when the lights go out? What about when the hashtag stops trending? What about when the camera crews are not looking at Colston anymore? Will there still be this same passion and enthusiasm to see a change? Because Bristol has for a very long time been so influential in the experiences of Black people. We cannot hide from that, good or bad. But what we need to do is say, well, where's the legacy in this? How do we make this so embedded that we completely change our culture? How do we change things so that this becomes so embedded that it's the golden thread in what we do? We don't need to say, oh, today we're going to talk about this, because do you know what? We just talk about it. It's something we just celebrate. It just becomes the norm. You know, a teacher's doing a PowerPoint and they automatically think, I'm going to make that PowerPoint diverse. Somebody doesn't have to go to you, oh, by the way, there were Black Tudors and white ones. Or someone doesn't have to go to you, there were Asian soldiers and Black soldiers. So when you talk about World War, make sure you put those images in. When it gets to a place where this just happens because we believe it's that important, then I feel like I can get excited. But I feel at this point in time, it feels like a bit of a trend. And don't get me wrong, it's good for those people who don't know. And for many people, this is like an awakening. I didn't know Bristol was like this. I didn't know. And Bristol's a real hub at the moment, a hub of excitement and enthusiasm and hope. But my hope is that this is not tokenistic. It's not short-lived. And when the next issue happens and there's a new crisis or a new focus, that Bristol's energy and need for change isn't lost.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of question whether people are just tagging along to like a trend or something, and this has to last in order for something to happen.
Absolutely.
Another question is that in like the school community, how do you ensure that every student feels represented or feels that they can have someone to talk to or like to explain their issues and educate them?
I think your question kind of relates to three different things. I think there's one thing about safe space. I feel safe space is so important. And as education professionals, you know, the same way I need to do it for my school, your teachers need to do it at your school. There needs to be a safe space in order to say how you feel, to express your emotion, to feel like you're not going to be gaslighted. It's not going to be reversed. You don't have to justify it, but there's a chance to talk. And I don't think that's just for Black children. I think that's for children of all different races and ethnic groups, because sometimes it might be trying to understand. So I had a particular situation where I had a child who had been racist to another child. And the first thing normally to do is, well, I'm going to sanction you because you were racist. But what I did instead is I said, you know what? We're going to have a conversation. Help me understand why it is that you felt that language was appropriate. And when he broke it down to me, he said, Miss, in my home country, what I've just said to you now, or what I've said to that child, was not racist. My country is far more racist than this. The things that are said, the things that are done, the way Black people are talked about, or people of color, visual minority ethnics. So he said, for me, when I said it, I thought that was okay. Having that conversation with that child gave him a safe space to express why he had said what he said, so we could move forward through education and not punishment. Punishing somebody doesn't do anything, but actually educating somebody, allowing them to understand the narrative, that's what makes the difference. So those safe spaces need to be there for conversation. I also think the second thing is that education. We need to make sure we know what we need to know so that we can impart that on young people. Because if we keep telling you half the story, if we keep telling you one vantage point or one narrow view, it limits you on your ability to articulate yourselves and feel confident in your narrative. So that's really, really important. And I think the final thing is a sense of unity and connection. That needs to be there. And to make sure that all children feel important, you need to look for the opportunities. So when I did my project, which was called What's in a Name, yes, it started with the African diaspora, and it was about understanding, well, what does your name mean? And it was a particular neighbor of mine who was called Whisper, and he talked about how in Zimbabwe, you name your child after what you want them to become. And he was like the 10th child, and you know, his granddad wanted a quiet child for his mum. But what that did is allowed us to all think about, well, what do all of our names mean? Is it biblical? Was I named after a celebrity? Is it cultural? Is it religion? And then that doesn't matter what color I am. It doesn't matter what ethnic group I fall into. It doesn't matter what country I'm born in. But what it does is it creates connection. And in that moment, all of those children, all of those teachers were beginning to find out things about each other that they never had because we didn't create the opportunity. So we need to create the framework as teachers, as professionals, so you guys can see your diversity between yourselves and celebrate, because you're all beautiful. I don't care whether you're black or white. What I'm interested in is that you see the beauty in who you are, but you see the beauty in others too. And we as professionals, we owe it to you to make sure that happens.
I think that's like a really like inspiring thing to say, and the fact that like these barriers and stuff like between us can be broken down, and there can be like that connection where we all just like get along, and there's no, you know, discrimination there or judgment. So I think that's so. We're gonna finish it off now. So thank you so much for allowing us to interview you today. You've been so interesting to talk, and you've had like a lot of really intelligent things to say, and it was really fun listening to you.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. It's been great to speak to you both too. It's been amazing. So I thank you for giving me your time. It's not just about, you know, you having my time. I appreciate conversing with you. I appreciate that as young people, you feel confident to have these discussions, because it's not easy. And you both need to be very proud of what you're doing here. You're being a role model now. You're being a role model to the next generation. You're showing them that they can have a voice, and they can challenge, and they can have advocacy, and they can connect. So don't underestimate the power in what you've done just because you're interviewing someone else.
Thank you.